And every time I call the sheriff, he's like, sure, Nance, what can I help you with? If you came to our luncheon, this is years ago, I don't even think I was running the chamber then, you talked about active shooters, and I just thought that is perfect. Unfortunately, thank goodness not here in Brevard County, but you can be out in the community, and they are happening every day throughout this country. So we wanted to have a little bit of information on that, and the sheriff will give a little bit of information on crime and what is going on in our county. And then for all of the tabletops, we're going to stay, so if you can stay a little later, we're going to film each one of you, and we will put that on our Facebook page, so to get more exposure. All of this, we knew that attendance wouldn't be quite as large as our normal events, but we want to make sure that you guys get great exposure. So stay around and we'll film each one of you. So I will now, without further ado, turn it over to our fabulous Sheriff, Wayne Ivey.
I'm going to try and go without the microphone. Everybody hear me all right? I got a pretty big mouth, so usually it carries pretty well. Well, I'm going to start where I always do, and that is to say thank you for allowing me to serve as your sheriff. I love this job. It is the funnest thing I've ever done in my entire life. One of the things that makes this job so great is I'm surrounded by an amazing team of men and women that are out there knocking it out of the park every day to keep you safe. So you see one of our team out there, one of Palm Bay's team, Melbourne's team, whoever it is, you let them know how much you appreciate what they're doing, because they are truly doing a great job to protect our citizens. I don't really need to introduce this guy because I think everybody knows him. This is Junie. He's a 7-year-old bloodhound. He is about 150 pounds, and he's trained to search for missing children, seniors with Alzheimer's or dementia. He's also trained as a child comfort dog. And so when we have a child that's been the victim of a crime, a dog like Junie will go in, sit with them, try and comfort them, calm them down, so that when we're interviewing them, they will disclose to us what happened. Before we started using comfort dogs, in fact, we were the very first agency in the country to use a child comfort dog for that purpose. We were only getting about 34% of the kids to open up to us and tell us what happened. When we started using dogs to calm them down, to build a rapport with them, we jumped from 34% to 81% disclosure. So they're the real deal. They're able to help the kids get through what has generally been a very traumatic experience for them. So they do a good job for us. Junie knows that I'm going to let him go. He's going to walk around and see you. I'm going to put this on his vest because at some point, if you get near him, you're going to need that. So he's going to walk around and say hi to everybody. Sam will keep attendance to him. And if you don't like dogs, or if you're not real good with them, just let Sam know and she'll come get him and take him away. So, all right, so let's, we're here to talk about how do we respond to disasters. We're here to talk about how do we prevent disasters. That's the most important topic, is how do we prevent a disaster from happening. And I know we've had some other speakers today that are talking about different things in different realms, but what I'm going to talk to you about is an active shooter. And a lot of times, you know, we in law enforcement, we'll talk at different levels and say, hey, our crime rate has dropped here in Brevard County. In fact, our crime rate in Brevard County has dropped 47% in the last 8 years. Think about that for a minute. 47% while our population has gone up, our crime rate's gone down. In fact, fewer victims of crime last year than any time in the last 40 years in the history of Brevard County. So we know that we live in a relatively safe community. And so a lot of times when I start talking about active shooters, people will say, well, Sheriff, you just told us it's safe here. Do we really need to think and worry about an active shooter? Well, to that, I ask you this. How many of you lived here in 1987? Just short distance from us, an active shooter happened right here in Palm Bay. In 2015, an active shooter happened at the Melbourne Mall. 2 years later, an active shooter walked into Parish Hospital, took the life of a patient and an employee. So the answer to that question is yes. Everywhere you go in today's world, you have to worry about an active shooter or someone with evil in their heart who intends to kill as many people as they possibly can. So how do we prevent that? Well, let's talk about the big picture prevention first. The big picture prevention is two things. One, aggressively going after those that have evil in their heart and commit violent crime. Going after them, locking them up, and keeping them locked up where they can't hurt anyone else. Two, fixing our broken mental health system in this country. And I will tell anyone, the mental health system in the United States is broken. Throw the baby out with the bath and start over, because that's the only way we're going to fix it. We've got to put focus back on treating conditions versus how many beds can we put into a facility. That's where we've got to get back to. And I think the only way to do that is to make it a focus and a fixation of society. We've really got to focus on mental health. But until we get there, how do you protect yourselves? How do you protect you, those around you in the movie theater, those around you in church, those around you right here today? And so if you go back and you start looking at how has law enforcement told citizens to respond to active shooters, the number one thing that people heard was this quick little poem, or this quick little rhyme, if you will, of run, hide, fight. Everybody heard that before? Run, hide, fight. So that seemed to be working. And then a few years ago, we had the Pulse nightclub, just about 60 miles from us. And I went over that morning. I went over to offer our resources, to offer our prayers, to offer any help we could to the agencies that were responding to that. And while I was there, I got an inside look at what took place that day. And on the way back to Brevard County, it occurred to me that the victims of the Pulse nightclub did exactly what law enforcement had coached them to do. Some of them ran. And when they ran, actually they got to the exits. Some of them actually blocked the exits, which kept others from getting out. They didn't do it intentionally. They did it because they'd been taught to barricade, but others didn't get out. Others of them, in the second series, they hid. But they didn't understand that hiding didn't just mean hiding, it meant barricade. So they went into bathrooms where there was nothing to barricade with. All they did was hide. And when he found them, they were fish in a barrel. But none of them ever got to the last part of the rhyme, fight. Because they waited on law enforcement to come save them. And unfortunately, 49 of them he got to before law enforcement could get there. So it occurred to me that we've been teaching people to run, hide, fight. That's all we ever said. Run, hide, fight. Run, hide, fight. We never said fight, run, hide, fight, run. It was a nice little rhyme, and so we just always put it out in the same order. And instead of being three options, it actually became a step-by-step guide that people thought they were supposed to follow. So on the way back that day, I thought to myself, I'm no longer going to teach people to run, hide, fight. First of all, this is America, the greatest country on the planet. We've won every battle we've ever been in, not by running and hiding, but by standing shoulder to shoulder and fighting our enemies. And sadly, in an active shooter situation, that may be just what it takes to save your life or your children's life. So I brought my team in, SWAT experts, crime prevention experts, just seasoned law enforcement officers, and I put about 200 years of experience at the conference table. And I said, I want a new plan. We're no longer going to teach run, hide, fight. I want something that our citizens can remember. I want something that they can pick from, and I want something that's not a step-by-step guide. So what they brought me was what we now call the 4 A's of survival. And if you get the chance, in fact, if you get the chance, make time to go to our website, to brevardsheriff.com, and look at a 7-minute video called the 4 A's of survival. It may just be what it takes to save your life and those around you. So I'm going to give you the 4 A's this morning. And if you hear me give the 4 A's again to another group this afternoon, they will get them in a completely different order. Because I don't want it to be a step-by-step guide. one of these four options you are going to have to pick, and you are going to have to use to survive, and you're going to have milliseconds to do it. So let's talk about our 4 A's, all right? And like I said, I give them in different orders. So one of our 4 A's is awareness. And by awareness, I don't just mean walking into a room and knowing where the exits are. That is vital. It's extremely important. But it's also about situational awareness, watching people around you, looking at what they're doing. And we're not just talking about an active shooter. You might be in the bank. You might be at the gas pumps getting gas tonight at 10 o'clock. Situational awareness applies in every aspect. You might have just pulled up in your driveway at home, and situational awareness is looking around you before you unlock the security of your car. Situational awareness is pulling deep into your garage and putting the garage door down before you ever unlock your car and step out. That's all situational awareness. And while we're talking about active shooters, yes, I want you to understand the room. That is extremely important. But I also need you to understand where you are going to go if bad things start to happen. How many of you saw just a couple days ago, they thought they had an active shooter at one of the Major League Baseball games, and you started watching what happened? As you go back and look in those videos, there were a couple different types of people. Some of them became frozen statues. They had no clue what to do. Others, the players actually, were very aware, and they were pulling people into the dugout. Other people were running for the exits. So to those that froze, they weren't already thinking. And in our business, what we say is don't wait for the emergency to happen to go into action. Go into action right now to save your life. So awareness is one. Let's talk about avoidance. What do I mean by avoidance? Number one, I mean let's avoid it completely. Let's avoid any type of interaction that may put us in peril. Some of that ties back into situational awareness. Other of it ties into making sure you're picking the right times to do things. Others mean being able to avoid the conflict completely by running and getting out of there. Now, when I say avoid, and we use the term run and everything else, how many of you think you could outrun an active shooter? Just put your hand up. The moment, I'm a little surprised that your hand didn't go up. I thought you'd be one of the first ones right there. So, all right. In The Art of War, Sun Tzu says that you have to know yourself and know your enemy. If you know yourself and know your enemy, you won't be killed in 100 battles. But if you don't know yourself and don't know your enemy, you'll be killed in every single conflict. So when I asked you how many of you thought you could outrun an active shooter, nobody raised their hand. All right, one person did. Here's the reality. If that active shooter is right here, I may not be able to outrun him. But if that active shooter is taking place in the next building over or in the next room over, I'm gonna be able to outrun that, and I'm gonna get out of there. And even me, I've never won a foot race in my life. Not once. I think it's my technique. That's the only thing I can figure it is. But I know I could get out of here if things turn bad. Now, some of us are going to run to the danger. Others are going to run away, and that's okay. You have to know yourself. So when you start thinking about avoidance, you got to know yourself. Could I get to those exits? Could I do this? If not, then we have to go to another part of our plan. But if it's happening in another room, your chances of getting to safety are very strong. The other part is encourage others to go with you, but do not let them discourage you from going. Don't take your purse, don't take your computer, don't take anything except your life, because that's the only thing we can't replace. Get out of there. Go as far as you can, and then go further after that. So we've talked about awareness, we've talked about avoidance. Let's talk about arming ourselves. In Brevard County, there is nobody that doesn't know that I advocate that every law-abiding citizen should have a gun. I believe that in my heart. I believe that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And we're seeing more and more incidents around the country where that is taking place. But again, we go back to what Sue said, you have to know yourself. How many of you in this room, and it's okay, how many of you in this room would never be comfortable carrying a gun with you? How many of you? All right? And that's okay because you know yourself. You know what tools you can use and what tools you can't. And let's be honest, not everybody should have a gun. All right? My wife should not have a gun. She's redheaded. There ought to be a law that says redheads cannot have guns. Now, she's got a bunch of them. In fact, I think more than I do. But not everybody should have a gun. And if you're somebody that would never use it or would never feel comfortable using it, or somebody that thinks they're comfortable with it but's never going to go train and practice, then that's not where you should be. So, obviously, concealed carry permit. If you have a concealed carry permit, how many of you have a concealed carry permit? Carry your gun with you everywhere you legally can. But don't just carry it where you legally can. Carry it to the range and practice. Carry it in your bedroom after you've made sure the weapon is safe and practice carrying it. Practice getting it out. Because if not, you're not going to be prepared for when the emergency happens. Now, what about if you're someplace you can't have a gun, or you're one of the people that raised their hand and said, I wouldn't carry a gun? Well, there's other weapons out there that you could use. How many of you have pepper spray? Okay? I'm personally not a big fan of pepper spray. In fact, my team knows that if I'm on a scene with them, don't pepper spray anybody, because it's going to get on me. That's why we spray our deputies and our law enforcement officers with it, so that they can learn to fight through the effects of it. So you have to understand, if you're carrying pepper spray, the wind may blow it on you. The person you sprayed may rush you, and through transference, it may get on you. So you have to be prepared to fight through the effects of it. Understand, it will impact you. So if you're somebody that carries pepper spray, know that in advance. You can also go online and buy what's called an inert, which is pressurized water in a pepper spray canister. Practice with it. The ideal target is right here, just above the eyebrows. We want it to go down into the eyes, into the nasal area. But if we shoot here, we're going to miss our target because it's going to drop. So we want to shoot forehead, eyebrows. That's our angle. How many of you have a taser? All right, tasers, you've raised your hand on everything, guns, tasers. So you got like a whole bag over there. Perfect. All right, I'm a big fan of tasers. Tasers are a great alternative weapon. They're also a great psychological weapon. As soon as that taser rattles, the person that is thinking about grabbing you or doing whatever they're going to do, it has an impact. So there's a lot of great tasers out there. You can buy them online. You can go to a lot of our local gun dealers here. They have tasers as well. I really like, if you go try it, you'll test it before you buy it, so you can see if it's what's going to work for you. My favorite is what's called the Taser cane. It's actually a fully functional cane. It puts out 1 million volts out of the bottom of it.